few artifacts of his life have remained: his wallet and his hat. In the 1890s Ireland, into which Michael was born, both land reform and home rule were being pursued by its citizens. Land reform involved legislation which prevented families from being evicted and their farms confiscated and consolidated into large estates for the wealthy. Home rule represented a separate Irish parliament within the British government. The Ireland that Michael knew was in transition in the late 19th, early 20th century. And by considering the time and places he lived, however, we begin to understand the man who exhibited such valor that day, 1929. Michael Donnelly was born in 1896. In 1896, the confiscation and consolidation of small farms into large estates had been ongoing for several decades. In Michael's home county of Leitrim, William Sidney Clements, for his own benefit, completed the collection of small family farms into a massive 95,000-acre estate, which included lands in Leitrim and neighboring Donnelly. The consolidation of family farms promoted the prosperity of a few at the expense of many. He was raised on a farm without the modern equipment of today, and the work was very hard. Out of adversity comes the strength of character that you carry throughout your life. Life was sustained by the farm, and most food came off the land, so there was always work to be done at home. There were no radios or televisions, but they were happy and thought lucky to live in the country. Mass and Gaelic football was big, and Fana always had a football team. Then Sunday night was dancing at the local dance halls. There was a strong sense of family, and everyone helped each other, as was evident with our parents. In most families, however, the teens left for England or America. He had a strong faith, a love of music, and he was a great dancer. His lightheartedness and easygoing demeanor made him a person that was fun to be with, and his fellow officers named him Smiling Mike. On April 22, 1899, less than 3 years after Michael's birth, his mother died from tuberculosis, leaving her children to care for 3 small children. Coincidentally, we celebrate the anniversary of his mother's death, the 110-year anniversary, this very day. The census of 1900 listed the family as widower and 3 small children, ages 6, 3, and 2. Michael's father married again in 1904, and his early life in Leitrim largely consisted of schoolwork, farm work, and helping to raise the household's small children, whose numbers had grown to 7, including him. Leitrim's population declined dramatically from 150,000 in the 1840 census. The nation's crop failure, evictions, migration, and immigration to England and America took a huge toll. So in 1913, Michael followed the pattern of those leaving for America. His father, now 56, and his stepmother saw Michael leave their farm one day, and without the modern convenience of international travel, it was likely in 1913 they would never see him again. Michael's ship took the same Liverpool to New York passage that the ill-fated Titanic had taken the previous year, and we're uncertain who Michael's companions may have been during that voyage, or the condition of his accommodations, but we can surely assume he was not among the tuxedo-clad passengers on the promenade, but he was probably below deck, seeking a new world and new opportunities. Upon arriving in New York Harbor, he was greeted by his sisters and began a new life in the United States. In 1914, Michael joined the United States Navy, eventually rising to the rank of petty officer. One can only imagine the impressions and experiences a man age 18 would have had aboard a ship in a nation's navy preparing to face the perils of a world war that had already begun in Europe. In 1915, the Lusitania was torpedoed 8 miles off the Irish coast that Michael had left 2 years before. The great ship sank in 18 minutes and killed 1,200 people. The Lusitania's sinking was a major factor in the decisions by the United States to join the war in 1917. We have no evidence that the war actually affected Michael's career in the Navy. However, we can be certain that his concerns included the apprehension of the influenza epidemic of 1917-1918. During that pandemic, which the world had never witnessed before or after, 10 to 20 million people died worldwide. 675,000 died in the United States. Cities like Philadelphia and Boston and New York were particularly hard hit, and the pandemic arrived in the Navy Yard in Philadelphia in September 1918. The pandemic's prime targets were men 15 to 35, especially those clustered in Army camps and aboard ships. And while Michael may have missed the direct effects of World War I, we can be certain that the worldwide pandemic was a critical event during his naval career. Upon completion of his career in the Navy in 1921, Michael was coming of age, and the age was the Roaring 20s. He applied for membership the following year in the Philadelphia Police Department at the age of 26. His career in the department spanned 7 years, during which time his bravery was repeatedly recognized by his fellow officers and his commander. Michael married in 1928 and lived at 632 North 67th Street in West Philadelphia with his wife, Mary Donnelly. They enjoyed listening to the Irish musicians on the radio stations which recently opened in the city. They witnessed the construction of the Ben Franklin Bridge and the Museum of Art. Michael and his wife enjoyed the conveniences of the newly built trolley lines, the underground, and of course dance halls were very popular at the time. There was a dark side to this era. Public flaunting of prohibition laws, mob violence, corruption, and the effects of a series of post-war recessions kept the city's law enforcement professionals active, and which probably contributed to the events of April 12th. As the shift came to a close on the afternoon of April 12th, Michael was probably contemplating dinner at home with Mary, enjoying longer evenings as summer approached, and Saturday would be filled with odd jobs around the house. Shopping with Mary on Lancaster Avenue would be Saturday, and respite from his patrol in South Philadelphia. Sunday would include morning mass, breakfast, and more time with Mary. Only 15 minutes remained before the end of his patrol. The sounds and the activities of the Carpenter Street neighborhood were winding down in anticipation of the approaching weekend. Suddenly, urgent shouts a short distance away broke the late afternoon quiet. Michael immediately put aside thoughts of Mary and West Philadelphia. He recognized the voice crying for help to be that of a store owner he had known for years, and the words quickly became decipherable to Michael. The store owner was crying he had been robbed. 2 young boys, ages 15 and 19, broke the afternoon stillness as they fled from the store. Michael saw the assailant's gun and clearly recognized this to be a serious situation. Somehow, someone had threatened the neighborhood that he had sworn to protect. This was what Michael's training over the past 7 years had prepared him for. The screams came from Sobel's cigar and candy store, and Mike went on the run. The policemen saw 2 youths running, firing their pistols. They turned to Moriana Street, the police in pursuit. One of the robbers turned onto Hall Street, a blind alley which leads to the rear houses on the east side of 4th Street. The robber fled, firing as he retreated. Donnelly was in the lead. The other police officers drew up. As the fugitive leaped over the fence, Donnelly fired once and then raised his body halfway over the fence. The robber, taking aim, seeing the reflection of the street lights on the buttons of Mike's uniform, fired. And Donnelly fell back. Bullets in the chest, abdomen, and left leg, and artery severed. Mike said, "They got me, boys." Donnelly's colleagues carried him to the street where he died. The heroism of this encounter cannot be minimized. Uncle Mike clearly knew these perpetrators were dangerous. They had fired their guns at the store owners, and they had fired them at Mike. He had fired a round of his gun, too, not something likely done by the police. The fact that Mike was shot 3 times indicated this man intended to kill him, not just hold him at bay. Michael Donnelly was aware of a very dangerous situation and proceeded anyway. He deliberately pursued the criminals up an alley in the dark, and it seems clear to me that hero status has been established. The next day, Saturday, the city's newspapers reported a policeman's murder. The city lost a policeman, the neighborhood lost a friend and protector. The outpouring of grief was captured a few days later in a poem delivered to the 7th and Carpenter Street stations by a 10-year-old boy and published in these same newspapers. I'd like to introduce my cousin, Mary Donnelly, from New York and formerly Leitrim, Ireland, who is going to read this poem.
Did you know poor Michael Donnelly, who died sometime